Hi everyone, my name is Adnan,
I'm Tamanna.
and today we're going to do the third episode of Tumorously Yours. Today we have a very special guest, Tasneem Khorakiwala, or as I'm used to calling her, Tasumasi. So Tasumasi has known me since we were like small kids growing up. She has three sons, and I've grown up playing with them a lot. I remember very vividly that we all would meet up on the beach near Sandy
Yeah.
Lane every weekend and just have a ball of a time and play our hearts out. Her youngest son, Mohammad, was diagnosed with cancer a few years back, but being the extra energy tufani kid that he is, he beat cancer and he's back to living a full life. So today we are going to have a conversation about it. And Taman and I are very grateful that you could join us today for the third episode of Tumorously.
Thank you so much, Tamanna and Adnan. My pleasure,
Thank,
always.
thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Tasumasi, to kickstart the episode, can you introduce yourself and Mohammed, and at what age he was diagnosed with cancer, what type of cancer was it, all of those small details.
Sure. So, as Adnan said, I have three sons, right? So, my eldest, Huzaifa, is around 25 now. Idris is about 21. And Mohammed right now is 15, going on 16. And he was around 12 years old in 2019 when we realized that he had Hodgkins lymphoma. So Mohammed had this growth on the right side of his neck. He had this growth for almost 3 years. So all the the pediatricians that I took him to, they would all say, get a FNAC. That's where they put a needle and they, remove the liquid and test it. Everything, all the tests came out inconclusive. And in 2019, I think somewhere from March, Mohammed started having fever every month. So I took him to my family doctor and I asked him, I said, okay, if they all said this is liquid retention. So I said, if it's liquid retention, can we remove the liquid? And the next day we went to his hospital and he put a small cut. He removed something, I don't know what he did inside. And he gave it to me in a small vial. And he said, this is normal procedure. Anytime we take something out from the body, you have to send it for testing. At the end of 8 days, we got a call from the hospital, the lab, saying that your results are ready, come and pick them up. When I picked up the report, I just read what they had written in the conclusion. And it said Hodgkin lymphoma. And I had a feeling I knew what lymphoma means because I had done a little bit of research 2 years back. So I just didn't react at that point of time. I called the doctor up. He said, okay, don't do anything. Come straight here. He called up my husband and he said, where are you? My husband said, I'm sitting in the mosque. He said, get up and come here. And that's where he told us, he said, this is a form of cancer. So just hearing that, as Tamanna said, that big dreaded C, lights out for both of us. Yeah. I too immediately started crying. I was like, I didn't know what's happening after that. Luckily, we had a driver at that point of time. So we sent Mohammed back home with him. And then there was another doctor in Vizag who's very famous for cancer treatments. So we went to him. He wasn't available. So that pressure just built up in those first few days, and we didn't know how to tackle this, In between, we took him to Hyderabad for some Tibetan medicine and Ayurvedic center, there, which is very famous for cancer. We were just trying our best, before the chemos actually started, we were just trying our best to get him out of it or, deal with it somehow. So that was how the whole thing started.
So, Tasumasi, you mentioned that your initial reaction was that you guys just started crying, but was Mohammed also there at that time with you guys?
No. That's what I said. I sent him back home.
So then how did you break the news to Mohammed and what was his initial reaction?
The day we took him to the Cancer Research Center, Tata Memorial. Okay, the first day we went alone and it was closed, right? So the next day we went back with Mohammed. And 12 years old, he's very able to read signs and everything. So he read it out loud. He said, Cancer Research Center, what are we doing here? So I just explained to him that there's a doctor here who we need to meet. he's able to deal with what your report says. That's all I told him. I didn't mention a word to him. And then when we met the pediatric oncologist there, he explained to Mohammed. So he put it across so clearly, no emotions, just facts. Okay, Mohammed, you have something known as Hodgkins lymphoma. You need treatment for this. So this is the treatment. This is what we're going to do. We're going to inject you with this. And this is how it's going to proceed. He just gave him that very first step. That's it. You're going to do 8 chemos. You're going to do 6 chemos. Nothing. Just this is what you need. That's it.
I want to ask you, so at this time, when even if the doctor broke the news and did it well, a 12-year-old knows how to use the internet. So
He did. He
And
got
so he
all
would
his
have-
information.
so did he discuss that with you, and how did that go?
He has not discussed it with us. He has just accepted what we have told him to do. The reason I feel this is because at home, we were just back to normal. We had not given anyone extra importance, or it's not as if, everyone started calling and I kept on talking the same things on the phone. I just went about my normal, this Mohammed went about his normal thing. He was going to school. Till his insertion of the port, he was going to school.
So okay, it's very inspiring also, the fact that he continued to go to school and you decided to deal with it as normally as you could, at least. But the fact is that he's taking all those medicines, all those doctor visits, all of that is happening, right? Which I'm sure all the other kids in his school were not facing at that time. And especially at that age, it's that, that cusp of teenage where you're going through all these emotions. So I want to know, for a kid that age, did you see him change in any way? How do you think he dealt with it? How did you deal with it? The fact that other kids his age are doing completely different things, right? They're focusing on homework and playing in the evening and all of that.
So what we did is we encouraged him to go jogging. Okay, because after his first chemo, he didn't want to go to school. Plus, the doctor said that if you don't want to send him, it's all right. Because if you send him again, he's prone to infections. And that made a lot of sense to me. I said, okay. So we got a tutor for him at home. And as his peers are concerned, his friends, he had told them that I have cancer. He had told most of them, and some of them had doctor parents. So I think his friend group was already aware of what he was going through. Some of the parents called me up and asked me, and I told them what's happening. And it was Children's Day, November 14th. So I spoke to the school and I asked them if Mohammed could attend school for 1 or 2 hours. So he had already shaved his head by that time. And I took him to school. They made me wait in the office. They took him to class. And he was like a hero because he got so much of importance. He felt like, okay, what I'm doing is great, all the trouble that I'm going through. So that set the tone for his future chemos.
So as a kid, like, he didn't care why was the reason behind the importance. He was like, importance is there. Oh, this is amazing. Like,
he was so conscious of his hair. He had lovely hair. He has lovely hair for that matter. And he's like, ekdam that, this in the mirror all the time, preening himself and all. So the day we shaved his head, I had promised him. I said, if the need arises for you to go bald, I will also go bald. And we shaved his head in the morning. I went to the salon. I got my head shaved. And I came to show him. He ran away.
Ran away.
He used to look at me. He said, what have you done to yourself? So that was Mohammed's reaction. But then he slowly, I think over a day or 2 days, he just got used to it. And I have to say this, my family, my friends, I mean, I couldn't have done all this without their support. Like the day I shaved my head, the guy who did it for me, when I told him the reason I was shaving my head, the thing he said to me, he said, I'm honored to be able to do this for you. That really struck it struck something in my mind. I said, people reacting like that instead of saying, no, don't do it. Why do you want to do it? he was like, I'm honored to do this for you, to do this service for you.
I
Then,
have to ask you at this point. So my mom also shaved her head
I
when I
know,
lost my
I
hair,
know.
and I know because we would meet at the chemo center because we had a similar
Yeah.
chemo timeline, Mohammad and I. And for me, at least, it felt like an immense support that somebody standing by me to that extent where their physical appearance doesn't matter to them, that
Matter.
they would go shave off their hair voluntarily by choice. And you did the same thing. And I want to know what is your thought at that point? Why did you make that choice?
So I only wanted to support Mohammed. I just wanted him to know that he is not alone. See, I cannot bear his pain. Okay, all the physical discomfort that he's going through, I cannot do anything about it. But just to show him solidarity, that he is not alone in this, that I am standing right there with him. And see, Mohammed has always been a dad's boy. He's been a papa's child. I think Adnan also knows this. He would only say papa. But that entire chemo cycles and the entire thing that he went to, we all saw him shift. His emotions, his attachment, everything shifted onto me. So I feel he did realize that whatever it is, my mom is standing right there with me.
But it's amazing what level of love mothers have to not care for any of this, because my mother did some of
Yeah.
the things that you are saying are uncannily the same things that my mom has said. So it's absolutely, I mean, I'm very inspired. But I also want to ask you another question on what you said earlier. You said that you had a lot of family support and you had a lot of like confidence in the people around you. How did you think that helped you, and how did you think that helped Mohammed also?
So see, I was his primary caregiver, right? But at the same time, I was also working. And it was not like I could just shut shop and sit in the house the whole time. So he had a chemo cycle of 15 days. So twice a month, he'd have chemo. So on the day he's having chemo, I'm with him the whole day. The next day, I'm with him the whole day because I know he takes time to recover. My mom lives in Bangalore. Okay, she was 70 at that time, 75, I think. She would come down every 15 days. She would just come down without my asking also. And she would stay in the house. She would just make sure Mohammed gets his meals on time. He's eating, he's taking his medication, he's doing everything. Just her presence in the house. And she fielded all my phone calls.
I have one question. So I remember when I was going through the treatment there, like you said, there are all sorts of people uh, at different ages, different stages going through the same disease. And the way they are dealing with it and the way the nurses and doctors around them are dealing with it
Yeah,
also had an impact. At least for me, I
it
remember
did.
because I went on the first day and they were very nice about it. They're like, see, this one drew this painting. Do you want to do this? And I would play music and listen because I wanted to feel better about the process at that point. And then the nurses were really sweet. They were very they wanted to help you if you wanted to be helped.
I totally agree with that. Totally.
Yeah.
Like Mohammed had these few favorites, the brothers there. So this one brother, he was so enthusiastic. He would actually game online with Mohammed, and they built up such a good friendship that guy, every time he'd get off his session, he would, talk to Mohammed and they'd go online and game, irrespective of whether he's in Tata or not. And the nurses knew him by name, all the sisters. Mohammed, come, come, come. So, he'd feel like king of
He's
the,
come home.
yeah. And he
Yeah.
has never, to date, all the chemos that I've taken him for, I've never seen him, make a face and say, shit, I don't want to go. Because they would really treat him like that. They make sure there's a bed for him. There would be older people sitting and taking an IV because there's no space. But the kids were treated, and not only Mohammed, I have seen them doing it to all the kids, irrespective of the social strata that they come from.
No.
And they'd make sure, if there are two kids taking chemo, they give us beds side by side. So, even the kids would talk to one another and build up a sort of rapport. But that's only 5-10 minutes once the chemo starts taking effect and they don't want to talk to anyone. But that kind of care and concern was there.
And that plays such a big role. Like, I'll tell you a random story that I had. So at that point, I also liked a certain bed in that hospital, and I said, no, I want this bed only. Every time I want this bed only. And they would do this. They would actually make sure that just then I have my chemo, they would keep that bed empty,
Yeah.
that Tamanna is going to come on this bed. And then I had this favorite song. One time I was listening to it at that point, and the nurse goes, oh, this is your favorite song, this is my favorite song also, play it loudly. And so we're just like listening to music together, and these are very little things, they don't
Yeah.
really mean much now, but at that point it felt like a lot. Like, okay, no problem, I have to go through the hell that comes 15 minutes into this, but the first 15 minutes starts off easily. And so
Yeah.
the rest of it doesn't feel like, oh my god, it feels like theek hai, ho jayega, ab jo bhi hai kar
You know,
lenge.
that feeling that you're entering a torture session is not there
Yeah,
because of the care and concern that they gave us,
yeah.
So this, when we're doing random stories, I just want to say, like Huzaifa, my eldest, is also bald by choice. So three of us are sitting in a single line, those three-seater chairs. And on one side of me, there was this one lady, okay? She comes from Kakinada or Vijayanagaram, I'm not sure. So she looks at the three of us. She's been giving us looks all along, and then she couldn't resist. So she's saying, which of the three of you all is a patient? I had a hearty laugh over that. I have to share this also with you. That doctor was just fantastic. Okay. I have never ever met a doctor like him. So after we finished Mohammed's chemos and he was supposed to join school, like it was exam time, March end, the school refused to let him write his final.
What?
They are saying he doesn't have enough attendance. Okay. Now, just to put everything in perspective, the day Mohammed was diagnosed, we went to the school. We spoke to the principal. We showed him the reports. We said everything. We said, once he starts his chemos, we won't be sending him to school. We'll make sure he's tutored at home. So those entire 6 months, this child is undergoing all the chemos, all the pain, everything, and he's still studying at home. And at the end of it, when it's time for him to write the exams, the vice principal says, I'm sorry, CBSE board says he has to have so much of attendance, so we won't let him write. Okay, you don't let him write, but they're not promoting him. They're saying he has to repeat the 7th standard. I said, I have struggled, Mohammed has struggled, for what? For him to be demoralized like this.
Yeah.
So after that, like we'd gone back to the doctor in Tata Memorial for some reason. And, he asked Mohammed, he said, so ready to write your exams? And Mohammed looks at him and says, they're not letting me write them. He got the school's number. He called up the school. He said, I want to talk to the vice principal.
The doctor spoke.
He spoke to her in front of me. And what he said to her, I will never forget. He's saying, if you're not letting this child write the exams, then we as doctors are failing in our jobs. Here we are going through so much just to put this child back into mainstream life. And here as an educator, you're refusing to let him join mainstream. He's saying, do you understand the mental impact of making him repeat 7th standard?
Yeah.
His entire class is graduating, going to 8th, and you're holding this child back after such a debilitating illness.
Right.
Saying, where is the logic? Where is the humanity? And I was just standing, I was just sitting in front of him with my mouth open. I'm like, oh my God, what is he doing? The next day, I get a call from school saying, Mohammed can come and write his exam.
Peace.
This is the power of Tata Memorial.
Tasumasi, you mentioned, right? Like this was such a hard journey for someone of, someone of an older age to go through, but for him to go through such a younger age, through so much hardship and pain. And have you seen any change in his perspective about things, when it comes to compared, like what perspective he has to what his peers have at his age?
Oh, definitely. Mohammed has matured overnight. You have to hear some of the things he says. Like I can't remember very clearly this one instant, but somebody had hurt him, after his everything, a year or two down the line, somebody had said something nasty to him, and I don't remember exactly. And he was sharing it with us. So somebody gave him the advice that you should behave like this. He said, just to be nasty, I'm not going to hurt the other person. It's all right. it hasn't hurt me to that level that I'm going to, be that nasty to someone. This is like a 13, 14-year-old child talking, where they're all out to only get back at one another and make themselves feel good about it. And that's what I realized. I said, my God, this child has really matured.
Tasumasi, like you mentioned, right? Like, when you're in such a position where you're so vulnerable, right? You don't know what's going to happen and you're exploring everything and all. And then finally, you have to collect your calm, get your composure, and then stick to one thing and then take the decision, right? So, like, can you elaborate on, like, then how
Okay,
does the
I'll tell you
response
how
change?
I'll tell you how I dealt with it. Okay. So for the longest time, I never realized how tense I was for 6 months. I was just moving one day to the next, to the next, to the next. That was how I was. So 6 months after, like, driving to work, and I just realized, it was like a flash. I just put my shoulders down. And that's when I realized that the entire time, from the time that we had discovered what he had, my shoulders had been like this, tensed,
Mhm.
completely like this. I never realized it till I actually, I took a deep breath and my shoulders went down. I remember that moment so clear. Now, I've just been functioning on automatic. So for me, that was the kind of toll it took. And whatever, few white hairs I had, by the end of it, I had completely, like, I had 10 times more white.
So I said I have two questions for you. Firstly, how important do you think it is for your husband to be in alignment, for your partner to be in alignment at a time when you're also
Absolutely.
going through this, right?
So you have to
Because
know this story, okay, of
hmm,
the initial phase. I was the only one pushing for chemo.
Mm.
And at one point of time, I realized that this is my child. I said, nobody knows better than me what he needs or what is going to be good for him. So we had major disagreements in the house. Like, that's between Ali Asgar and me, because Ali Asgar was on that side, that no chemo, this, that. But we will address this issue with the treatment that is required. I'm not at all embarrassed to say this. It was a big struggle for us. Finally, we were supposed to leave for Tata Memorial that morning, and my husband said, but why should we take him for chemo? Why should we let him undergo this? And then I made him sit down and I explained to him. I said, see, as a parent, I will do everything possible for my child. And then I made him talk to all my doctor friends. And I said, you need to know what I know, because that's where the rift is coming. You don't know the knowledge that I'm getting from all these people, right? My best friend is an anesthetist. She's no more. Then another friend, another family friend of ours, he's a oncologist, he's a surgeon. So I got him to talk to all of them. I said, you please, and then there was a doctor in Mumbai who's a research oncologist, and he's like wildly famous. He's always on call all over the world. And even he said the same thing. Like, I put him on speakerphone, for my husband to hear. And then finally Ali Asgar came around and he said, okay, fine, let's just go for the chemo.
I just want to say that basically you and your partner, you are at different opinions of what to do, but then by getting your partner on the same knowledge base as yours, you both were able to take the best decision for your
Yeah,
kid,
absolutely.
right?
See, I couldn't have done it without Ali Asgar, okay? Because just knowing that he's supporting, he's there all the way, that really helped.
I think this episode we spoke about so many things, right? Like right from how it was diagnosed and how it affected Mohammed's schooling life, then how the emotional response was from you as parents, and then everything. And we always hear cancer happening to someone who's on the older side, but for it to happen to someone who's so young in his
So,
20s
yeah.
and 13s, and then to you guys to go and deal with this in such a mature way and come out of this with bright and shining colors. I think it's really nice. And yeah, Tasumasi, thank you so much.
So I want to say something here before we end, that
Please.
when you approached me and you said you wanted me to talk about this, I was really honored. And to Tamanna also, a big thank you for letting me share this experience. So all the best in all your future episodes, both of y'all, and Tamanna, go strong.
and give a lot of our love to Mohammad.
Just don't think of this as the dreaded C. If you take it with a big pinch of salt and you say, okay, this is an illness, not a disease. It's an illness that we have to get through.